Hello, listeners. Welcome to season 2 of the Masters Decoded podcast. I am Anis Merchant, the chief decoder. I want to thank you for the overwhelming response to season 1. Your feedback and encouragement led me to bring you season 2 of the Masters Decoded. The season will tap into how technology, artificial intelligence, and other socio-economic factors have impacted my guest careers or passions.
Hello, listeners. I'm glad to share with you the fifth episode of our special series on Masters Decoded. In partnership with Asian Digital Supermovers, which we conduct every Sunday at 6 p.m. IST or 8:30 a.m. EST on ClubHouse. Our guest for today is Pankaj Rai. He's currently the Group Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Aditya Birla Group. With over 25 plus years of experience, Pankaj brings in a unique perspective of current and future trends. Today's session is focused on the future of workforce in the age of AI and technology. So without much further ado, let me get on with it.
Before we continue, a small word from our sponsors, Anchor.fm.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So, welcome everyone. This is the Asian Digital Supermovers Club. We bring to you OG experts and thought leaders from the field of everything related to the Asian digital super economy. And we are a group of diverse people who are running the club and bringing to you the best thought leaders out there. It is our effort that, and we hope that you not only like the content associated with Asia, but you're also with the global leaders who are coming in. We are able to understand what the globe has to offer and what Asia has to offer to the globe. We bring to you experts from the field of product management, technology, VCs, venture capital firms, and of course fintech. Today we have Anis with us, who runs the Masters Decoded series on Asian Digital Supermovers, where he brings champions from every single field and helps us understand and makes our Sunday a lot better. So a big warm welcome to Anis, who has restarted after the holiday break. So Anis, how was the break and did you enjoy being away from ClubHouse?
I was on and off on Clubhouse, but the break was definitely good. In Mumbai, it is raining right now, so the monsoon's break is very well welcome for many of us. But yeah, I'm back and hope to have more of these sessions on Asian Digital Supermovers as we move along every Sunday.
So Anis, do you want to introduce Pankaj and then we'll get started?
Sure. And candidly, Pankaj doesn't need an introduction in the Indian community for sure. But for everyone who don't know Pankaj, I'll take a liberty of introducing him. So Pankaj, I don't have anything scripted, but I'll go with what I know Pankaj of. Pankaj has been in the industry for more than 2 decades now. But today, currently, he serves as a Group Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Aditya Birla Group. And we'll definitely talk more about what his role entails. But more importantly, Pankaj has taught many of us how to create networks and do networking. He's a mentor, he's a coach, and he's a great friend. And I can tell you this much, if anybody wants to learn networking, Pankaj is the person. He knows probably everyone in the tech AI space for sure, in India and the larger community in the world. So Pankaj, welcome to the group, and we look forward to today's conversation.
Thanks, Anis. Great to be here again with you.
No, it's our pleasure, Pankaj. So, Pankaj, before we get to connect on the topic, which is the future of workforce, and double click on that topic, you want to give a quick background? I know you've currently joined Aditya Birla Group, but a little bit background about what you currently do at Aditya Birla Group. As much as you can share, I think that will be really helpful to set the context.
Sure, Anis. So I just joined the group 2 weeks ago. Taking over from my friend Deep Thomas, who had set up this team about 4 years ago, and he moved on to the US to pursue some personal interest. So this team is really a group function which is supposed to support all the various group companies of the group. By the way, this group is present in aluminium. Hindalco is the name of the company. Cement, Ultratech is the name of the company. We have Grasim, which has a lot of chemicals and fibers. There's Carbon Black. There is Aditya Birla Fashion Retail and Financial Services. The last two are the ones which I think are more consumer facing, and hence a lot of people know about that. But the other ones that I spoke about, they are far older and far bigger and far more profitable. So that's the sort of broad contours of the group. The role of this data analytics team, as it was set up 4 years ago, was to see how the data and analytics culture can be built inside various groups companies. And in the last 2 weeks, what I have understood is that the traditional companies, the manufacturing ones, have been far more eager to pick up data analytics, and the team that I lead is working a lot with them. Of course, they work with the other, retail and financial services as well. But looks like the offtake has been far more on the industrial side. So I think the role that I have is to assess where we are in that journey and try to see how we can add value and make data analytics more part of the cultural fabric of the group companies.
And you've definitely assumed and resumed on a role of changing the face of a company which has been in the setup for a long, long time, specifically in India and globally. And one of the critical thing is you're focused on is data and analytics. And things which really make a big difference is people. And the topic of today's conversation is going to be about the future of workforce, Pankaj. You've seen the industry evolve from your Dell days when you were focused on analytics and driving that, and much before that with GE as well. How have you seen the transition happening about people, about their thinking? And, when you look to hire people, how do you see that transitioning happening today?
Yeah, so I have worked also in GE long ago, and I also had the fortune of working as a black belt in GE, because at that point in time, Jack Welch, the then CEO, was very focused on Six Sigma and wanted the company to embrace a process-centric, continuous improvement culture. So I draw parallels from my GE experience of maybe 2 decades ago when I was over there in their financial services business. To where I am now in this industrial conglomerate, almost like GE, which is very diversified and trying to do a lot of things. And the parallel that I draw is that at that point in time, the CEO felt that process improvement and continuous improvement was a key element that the whole group needs to embrace. And that's when they set up the Six Sigma team. They had black belts, and these people were there to work with various business units, work with them to say, how do you create that culture of process improvement and so on and so forth. And the way they used to do it was these, black belts would act as consultants. They'll work with business teams to say, what are your problems? How can we help you? Understand the language of Six Sigma, which, by the way, some of the people who are familiar with this will remember we used to have the methodology called DMAKE, which was really define, measure, analyze, improve, control, quite commonsensical. You define the problem, you measure where we are, you analyze the data, you improve it, and you control it, make sure it stays there. So that's what we all used to do. And over time, what I saw that Six Sigma really became a part of the DNA of not that company, but many other companies. And these Six Sigma black belts, seem to have disappeared, and they aren't a breed today as they used to be. And I think that osmosis was completed, and today many of those black belts are business leaders, and these leaders, I think, are better leaders than their predecessors because they have ingrained Six Sigma and continuous movement. So the reason I gave this longish explanation of Six Sigma was that I think that any new capability that is to be osmosized inside an organization starts up something like that you have a bunch of experts who are from the outside, but over time their job should be to really eliminate themselves and make sure that that capability is embraced and embedded in that team and in those people. And I think the way it happened was in a few different ways. One, some of these black belts went on to do those business roles. There were people in business, they came to do these Six Sigma roles. So I think there was an exchange of talent between the specialized team and the business teams. There was, training and curriculums over there to make sure that, people understood the language that kind of pervades this whole discipline. And therefore, there was some coaching provided to all of those people. There were projects done to show people how it works. So it was a player and a coach. So that is what I think the consultants were. And I think when I draw parallels to analytics, or frankly, pretty much any capability that you want to embrace, I would say that those consultants, while they are outside, they need to somehow determine how to create some kind of a discipline so that they can coach and train people. They need to also be players to show how that whole methodology has to be applied and how these things need to be learned. They need to create some IP, some product, some curriculum, some ways of working through which others can learn. And over time, all the knowledge that they have ideally should be sort of embraced into the business. And whatever they knew at that point in time should get eliminated. Now, in the world of data analytics, I think there'll be so much more happening that this whole elimination of your current job and your current skill set will actually lead you to go higher up in the curve and pick up other things that don't exist today. So I look at current situation a bit different from the Six Sigma situation, in the sense that Six Sigma was that one capability which got absorbed and that finished. Data analytics is not that. I think it's an evolving capability and will continue to evolve. And therefore, the role of these central teams or the enabling teams has to be a bit of a virtuous cycle of enhancing the knowledge of what you have, then go on to pick up new knowledge which is at a higher level, pick that up and give it to these people, and then go on and go. So I think in some senses, this team should be continuously looking at raising the game and enhancing the skill set of the central teams. That's how I look at the roles of these central teams in today's world of data analytics.
Building on to what you just said, Pankaj, like you spoke about the continuous improvement. One of the interesting trend which is happening is continuously we see in the job market at all different levels is continuous movement of workforce from one setup to another. Do you think that's sustainable in the long term?
I look at this as the same thing that has happened to any new technology or any new capability that there is a bit of a buzz, and then everyone is chasing them. In fact, I can't remember these days that so many years of work experience that when did this happen? But I remember at one point in time, everyone who was studying engineering wanted to become a computer science engineer. It almost appeared that the world will be run only on coding and software, and every other branch of engineering was meaningless. Of course, we have past that phase. In fact, these days I seem to see that a lot of people are trying to study economics. In fact, my two daughters are studying economics as well, while me and my brother studied engineering. So I think new things come on the horizon and people go there, and then of course the price of that talent goes up, and then over time it levels off. So I think in today's day and age, I see a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people. They want to learn new tools and learn new techniques, and I tell them, hey, you can learn Python or R or whatever that tool is, but it's going to become obsolete very soon. So while you might command a premium because you know Tableau or some other tool, but that tool will become obsolete and something else will come in. So I think today more than before, anything that you learn, there is a bit of a hype, but you need to continuously relearn, because the way it goes up, it also goes down. So yeah, I think that we are in that hype where at a macro level, these types of skills are in high demand. This is the computer science today of engineering, which was there a couple of decades ago, and I think it will settle down somewhere, because I think the supply and demand plays out, and I have no reason to believe that something of that sort will not happen again.
Now, there's good old rules which we grew up with, which is the 440 rule: study for 4 years and work for 40 years, has definitely been disrupted. And more importantly, the skills which we thought that we acquired once will live forever has also been disrupted. Today, I can tell you there are industry stats that everybody has to revalidate their skills between 6 to 9 months and relook at their skill pool every 4 years. So you either enhance and pivot into a different new skill altogether, or try to embrace and enhance the skill pool, because the technology or the business or the science has evolved, which forces you to rescale yourself every 4 years. And we've seen people who've not been successful at it have either stagnated in their current roles, or they've either lost jobs because of variety of reasons. And talking about job loss, often AI and technology has been touted as one of the biggest reasons why people will lose jobs. But pandemic proved otherwise as well. There were other economic and worldly affairs which had an impact on people losing jobs. But talking about job loss, how much do you think the future of workforce will depend on a job? That's the biggest question in my mind. Like whether my kids would really want to work or they want to be a YouTube artist or be a creator of their own sorts.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and Ethan, as you can imagine, we all get that question all the time. So, I have let me share with you a few different strands of thinking. And by the way, I'm new to Clubhouse, so I see some hands being raised. I'm sure you'll figure out how to engage folks who are raising hands. But let me share with you a few different strands that I said that come to mind on that topic that you mentioned. I'll bring it all together. So the first one is related to how do you form your careers and how do you learn and what do you learn and all of that. So I kind of tried to summarize my own learnings into what I call the 3P framework based on my own sort of life data, so to say. And the first P really was the process P, to say, hey, in the good old days and my G days, process was king. And because the world was linear and the process was king, if you could improve processes continuously, you could get out the others because people were not improving process. They were just standing still. And in my mind, the classical example was Toyota, who said, I will, my folks will come every day in the morning, have a morning meeting. In that huddle, they probably drive 0.1% improvement. And if Ford and General Motor didn't do that, we'll beat them. And I think that's what they did. But I think, over time, I think that process, which assumed a linear world and therefore continuous improvement was the way to win, changed because here came along Amazon or Tesla or whoever, Tesla in the auto example, to say, hey, the world is not linear. It is actually multidimensional. So you can't rely on continuous improvement. You have to now rely on, sort of continuous reinvention. So you have to sort of come up with a new product. So then came the second P of product, which said, hey, if I have a product better than yours, and that product is not a linear thing. It's a agglomeration of a bunch of ideas that we have, and we will solve your problem using that. And I think in my mind, the third P, which is now prevalent, and by the way, the other two Ps are still relevant. They are just subservient to this third P. And to me, this third P appears to be purpose, that, you can't tie yourself to a process or a product. I think you have to tie yourself somewhere to a purpose, because all of us as human beings seek a purpose, and that purpose can't be building a product, because product will come and go. I think it has to be some kind of a purpose which is higher order, to say, I want to solve the problem of mobility, or I have the purpose of solving a healthcare issue or whatever. And then the products and the processes subservient to that will come and go, but your purpose hopefully will stay. So one is this theme around thinking of a purpose and not a product and process in terms of your career journey, because those are having a short life cycle, and you don't want to keep changing your identity and focus and so on and so forth all the time, because you can get confused because of that whole 440 rule. We all like to sort of follow something for a longer term, and therefore to me purpose is that. I think the second strand, that comes to mind is that about job loss and job obsolescence. I think, again, sort of somewhere related to the first theme that I spoke about. I think nothing new is happening today. It's just happening at a faster pace. So I think that whole obsolescence, was happening even in the past. I think it took a generation to see that the steel industry jobs are gone in the US, or the auto industry jobs are gone in Detroit or whatever. I think these days things are happening at a much more faster pace, because all the exponential technology that exists, they are able to create obsolescence of the previous technology faster, and therefore that 440 rule doesn't apply, because in the past things changed in 40 years, then 20, and now 5. And therefore you need to keep reinventing. And like I said, maybe our kids will have 4 or 5 careers in the traditional sense, but maybe one career if they are kind of aligned to a higher purpose, and they solve that problem through working in a capitalist environment, working in a social impact environment, working as an entrepreneur, working as whatever. So I think it depends on how you define your career and so on and so forth. And the last thread that I'll bring up is that, and that's something that I talk to a lot of college students about, that don't seek a job, because many of these things that you seek did not exist some years ago. So maybe you can be the job creator, the creator of a new discipline, like you said, the YouTuber, or the creator of a new company that you could create and say, I'm going to solve this problem which no one has solved before, anything like that. So, Anis, maybe a slightly long-winded answer to your question, but I thought these various strands that come to my mind are relevant to the question that you asked.
No, Pankaj, whenever you share some things, it definitely makes a big impact. And we have Prakash on the stage. Pankaj, you did prompt that Prakash had raised his hand. So, Prakash, you have anything to share on this topic, or provide perspectives.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi, Anish. Thanks for getting me here. Thank you, Monica, for setting up the room. And Pankaj, lovely to meet you. I'm just picking up one of the threads that first of all, brilliant articulation, the way you put the three P's. And, it is definitely indicating to the fact that, I wanted to, add to your point that essentially the key skill is your ability to think. Unfortunately, there is still not a program called a Masters of Thinking, or and it naturally, kids have to start picking it up at an early age as to how do you break down a problem to solve, or even if there is no problem to solve, how do you, react to a situation by way of intelligent thinking, and that is kind of an underpinning key skill that will be needed and become even more relevant as you need to be more agile into the constantly shortening cycles of obsolescence as civilization is experiencing it to be. So that's, I think, that is very important. Now, which brings us to the next point that, how is this industry going to react? The point that I'm now going to make will have two aspects to it. One aspect is that a very young professional can come into the industry and be absolutely fantastic at doing something in a particular space of data science management or building a framework or building an automation or whatever it may be. He may be really brilliant at it. And, how do you value the skill that he brings in the table as opposed to, let's say, a professional of 20 years of experience who brings that experiential set and that enables the thinking in the room and does not have the same kind of skills which is required to, set up the data lake or set up the AI infrastructure of the organization. So that's one part. And the other part is that how do you, as younger people come and keep acquiring newer skills which are in vogue at that point of time, how do you help them internalize that important pivot, anchor their whole behavior in that important pivot. That skill is one thing, and thinking ability to think moderated by the journey, professional journey or life journey that they have had is another thing, and they both need to be married in order to achieve the purpose and the product and the process that is needed.
Prakash, thank you so much. I think you've triggered some really good thoughts, and I have to say, I do think about some of these things. So let me again share a few perspectives that have been triggered in my head based on what you just mentioned, and they're absolutely fantastic ideas that you kind of triggered, Prakash. Thanks for that. So first of all, I was looking at my daughter who just went to college. She just started 2 weeks ago, and she's gone to this new university where actually no one has graduated so far. It's called KREA, KREA, and it's in the south of India, and I think the first batch will graduate next year. So I think I was just telling my friend that this is what she's doing, and I've not been very engaged in her in her studies. So they said, but what do they teach? So I actually came back and asked her, what course are you reading? And she said, creative writing, logical reasoning, something related to ethics, something related to philosophy. And I said, wow, I never read any of these courses either in school or college. Then I was talking this morning to a few friends of mine, over my cycling trip, where I learned that there's this guy, Ricardo Semler. Some of you may have heard of him. He was very famous. He wrote a book called Maverick, where he just turned the whole management thinking on its head and did things very differently. And he's apparently started some schools. So I said, okay, so what do they teach in that school? And he said the courses could be something like, how to assemble a bicycle. And if you have to assemble a bicycle, you better know the value of pi. And then you also know why pi is relevant for you to memorize and things like that. So I think the point that I wanted to, make, Prakash, is that I think our education system, the way I see it today, is undergoing a change. My view is, and like I said, I'm not a big thinker about how history has shaped these things, but my guess is that this whole education system that we have came thanks to the Industrial Revolution, which was rooted in the era of manufacturing and hierarchy, and the whole waterfall way of thinking, where someone at the top knew what is to be done. We will make a car, and as long as it is black, people will buy it, and things of that nature. And therefore, the whole system, whether it was the manufacturing system or the education system, which was feeding those factories, was designed to serve that purpose, and it lasted for many years. So I think somehow my view is that all our ideas, thoughts, questions that we ask are rooted in the 150 years of the education system that we have seen, which was thanks to the Industrial Revolution. And now I think the world has changed. We are in the world of agile. We are required to have a growth mindset. So the first thing that I tell people, that if you have asked me a question or if you asked yourself a question, you should first check whether that question is rooted in the right framework, because maybe that question was rooted in the waterfall era and it's not relevant anymore. So maybe you should change your question. Maybe ask yourself the 5 whys and find the right question. So Prakash, I don't think I have an answer to your question, but I do have some thoughts where I think that the whole education system, the way it exists today, needs to undergo a radical change, because if your consumer, if your industry, where there is no the taxonomy of which industry are you in is irrelevant. Which industry is Amazon in? And the answer would vary every 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. So I think the whole framework has changed, but our education system is still a bit old, and I think education system remains that way because it's hard to change an education system where the product is seen 12 to 15 years later. So it will change a bit slowly, but I see a lot of green shoots around me where things are changing. And I hope that the new system which comes about promotes a lot more critical thinking. And I keep saying that the solution space of solving problem in which we grew up in is commoditized. I can put a problem on Kaggle and someone will probably solve it for me for free and I don't even have to pay for it. I think the premium is in the problem definition space. So I would think, Prakash, that the way I look at the future is that the problem definition is where the value is. In the past, problem solutioning was where the value was because people had some, defined set of needs. If someone defined what those needs were, the solution space is where the creativity used to occur. Today, when our, tummy is full and some of us have sort of moved up the Maslow's hierarchy, I think the problem space is where the value will be created because there are umpteen number of problems worth solving, and people who pick the right problems to solve is the ones who are creating value. That I think to me also explains some of the startup ecosystem that these guys are picking up stuff, very differently from all the others did. But that's what I think, Prakash. But thanks for triggering those thoughts, and there's something I'll probably think a bit more about now that you've triggered it.
Well, it's my pleasure to listen to you, Pankaj. Thanks a lot.
Hey Anis, I'd like to step in because I have a Janmashtami celebration prayer meeting which is happening. So I want to ask Pankaj two questions. Can I cut the line? Pankaj, first of all, a pleasure listening to you, and especially because of how simply you have provided everything that I thought is a lot of executive speak, but you've done it so honestly, transparently that I really enjoyed the conversation, and therefore I'm asking you this question. We've been hearing a lot about IT hiring, we've been talking about tech skills, and we've been talking about the future of the workforce, especially offset against what we are seeing as probably non-linear growth in the last year because of COVID and digitization. But I'm very confused as to what, as CXOs, would be your ability and therefore your focus to be able to provide a better quality of life or be able to upskill these folks with better tech skills so that they are integral part of our companies and are not, leaving in droves towards other. I would think more attractive offers, that being one, and second, their ability to also have a longer term career, because it seems that everybody wants to be independent and retire very quickly, the fire principle, and you know how these things are in terms of how these fads are appearing, and I call them a fad, and I'm sure I can be corrected, but I would love to get your take on this, especially because you've seen the cycles of evolution and technology growth, and then there's a question on the back channel that I will register you in a bit.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks for asking that question. And I have to say, some of us who have seen the past are probably the worst position to answer what is going to happen in future, because our moorings are so much in the past that for us to unshackle our past learning and think about the future is harder. But I'll still, attempt to do that. So I think I will probably start with the example of what's happening in China and my interpretation of it, and I'll bring it back to what's going to happen, what is happening, and how I think about things, frankly, in my own, around me, and how my decisions are getting shaped. So if I look at what's happening to the ed tech in China, and these are purely, like I said, my own interpretation, and maybe if I'm wrong, then so be it. But you have to just take the essence of my storyline, because what's happening in China is not important, but my thinking about it is what is important, which will I'll bring it to how I'm thinking. So to me, the whole edtech ban, so to say, hey, edtech companies can't be making money; they should be non-profit companies, which China has done. And a lot of people were, very furious and very unhappy, and they said this is a threat to capitalism, and how can China do this and that and all of that. But my interpretation is that the Chinese government thinks 50 years thinking about their own countries, that they had a one child policy, which led to, and there's a fantastic movie called One Child Nation on Netflix that I saw. They, whichever way they sort of achieved it, I think now they're realizing it, that their population is going to just drop off the cliff, and they can't live with that, and they started the two-child policy and now the three-child policy. But how do you change behavior of your population to have more children? And I think having a lower cost of bringing up a family is an important part of it. Education being one part of it. I'm sure there's real estate and many other things. So I think their whole focus of policy would be to see how do we promote our long-term national interest, and everything else, whether it is this or that, has to be subservient or rather serve that national interest. So in that national interest, I think the whole high cost of education doesn't help. So they're saying, hey, you can't make money in education. It should be just free, and everyone should just be able to do that. By the way, in our country, we had a similar thought process that education should not be a profit-making venture. Unfortunately or fortunately, tutoring or tuition can be, but that's not what China is. So I think what I'm saying is China did something which looks very ad hoc or this thing, but it is trying to serve the long-term interest. So bringing to my own thinking about today, so let's say, and I'm giving you an example of my own company, and this is sort of for now very, very early, but I'm doing data analytics for a large conglomerate, and my job is to help them become better. So the way I would think about the talent in my team would be to say, you are a data scientist or you are a premium skill. But my view would be that I would like to hire people who would love to be business leaders tomorrow, who would love to lead businesses and have a data analytics mindset, just like the Six Sigma people that I spoke about. That your aspiration should not be to retire as a data scientist, but should become a business leader with this skill set and other skill sets. And therefore, I would love to promote people to do this for some time, go somewhere else, do a strategy role, do another operational role, and hone yourself and become more cross-functional and holistic. And I would allow more people to come in here. I think if I had that thought process, then giving a lot of crazy salary to a lot of these specialized people for too long will defeat the purpose. Because if I was paying very high and very differentially high salaries to these people, they wouldn't want to go anywhere else. They'll say, hey, this is the place to earn a lot more money. Why would I change my job? And everyone else elsewhere in the company would want to come into this job because that's where you get paid more. So I think my approach to compensation would be to get folks who don't want to make the quick buck and want to just remain that premium skill, maybe a few, but the large number of people should have the aspiration or the enthusiasm to become business leader, pick up new skills and things of that nature. So that's the type of thinking that I have, that certain skills will have a premium, but that will go down. And if some of the people become too specialized for too long, I don't know. Maybe they are happy with that. But I think that if they don't develop other skills, it will be harder to succeed because more than before, today and the future will rely a lot more on collaboration and ecosystem. And collaboration and ecosystem doesn't come just through one specialist. You have to develop many more skills to be able to handshake with other skill set. And some of the cases, you better go there and pick up those skill sets. So the long and short of it, that I don't believe in fancy salaries as a way of retaining talent. To me, it is a short-term move, and some people will benefit from it, and so be it. But if I were to build a long-term sustainable organization with a purpose, I would rather get people who are aligned to that purpose, willing to stay the long term, picking up different skills, and not get hyped about making a quick buck in the next 3 to 5 years. But then that's me, and maybe maybe I won't get the best talent. I change my mind, but right now that's what I'm thinking.
Pankaj, you have explained the conundrum that we are all facing, and thanks to your excellent articulation, I feel a little bit more validated. But I think it will take a lot of time in order to be able to really balance out in our heads as to what is happening in the outside world. But Pankaj, there is a brilliant question from Anil in the blue, in the first row. He's Capital Calculus on Twitter and is a renowned journalist, and I'm very glad that he has attended this room. His question to you is. One thing in this makeover is institutional memory in an organization. How does Pankaj rate its relevance in the new era?
Yeah, that's a that's an excellent question, and I think it depends on where you are. So again, yesterday I was having a chat with a bunch of people, and we have I'm fortunate to be in a place where I enjoy running and cycling and all of that, and the group of people that I engage with are from all walks of life and all different ages. And one of the things that I do over the weekend is not just cycle and run, but chat with them. So this is a runversation and a cycloversation, and we have been starting about this whole our startup ecosystem, careers, things like that for a while. So I'll share with you what I've been learning. Like I said, learning is a never going quest. So the institutional memory question. So if I, let's say, work for the Aditya Birla Group, which I do today, there's a way to think about institutional memory where there's a founder. I used to work for Dell. Michael Dell was the founder over there, and there are many founder-led companies. I think in some of those firms, and here I'm very new, but I would imagine that the institutional memory is very critical, because the founder is over there who carries a legacy of not just his own but of his father and grandfather and all of that. And there's a lot of institutional memory already inbuilt, and some of it may not be even known to them, and therefore you need to understand and respect and deal with it. But if you were working in a new startup which started 3 or 5 years ago, their institutional memory is fairly short, and their goals and purposes might be very different. So I think we need to take that into account when thinking about new businesses. So if you were a new upstart, you might want to let's say launch a new company in edtech, somehow create a lot of downloads and eyeballs and all of that, still be loss making and sell yourself out in 3 to 5 years and get done with it. But maybe if you're working in a large institution who is not in the game of, let's say, creating value and selling it out while they're making a loss, but actually sustaining a long-term business, then you should be also thinking about the profitability that business can generate. And some of us, can see around us lots of new companies coming in, getting sold off even before they turn a profit. And I think the people who are buying it are seeing some more longer term value in the data that they have gathered, or the business model that they've created, and so on and so forth. But I think every institution has to respect their own memory and be subservient to that. Just like my analogy of the national construct of China, that end of the day, everyone is part of an institution, a country, a thought process, or whatever. And clearly, you have to play the game which is aligned to that institutional memory, Monica.
Brilliant, Pankaj. I'm really glad to first of all get this question and then get such a brilliant response. I think it helps all of us explain and understand this a little better from especially the CXO perspective. Really appreciate you making the time on a Sunday, and happy Janmashtami to everyone.
Same to you, Monica. So, Kai, you've been waiting patiently and you've been on the stage. So, you have any perspectives? And I've been in clubhouse and rooms where you've shared a lot of perspective about education and future of workforce. So, do you have any thoughts on the conversation which we've been having today?
Absolutely, Anis, and lots of thoughts. Really good, first of all, to be in this room. I love the name of the clubs so much, the Asian Digital Super Movers. And I think in some way that it describes a part of me, because I was really fortunate to be described by a Indian XR, so extended reality podcaster, to be one of the top 50 movers and shakers in Asia for the XR industry. So he ranked me number 14. So I was really fortunate. And I've been to India 4 times and as well. I have lots of Indian friends, and had the joys of working with lots of Indian companies, and extremely impressive and skillful and respectable individuals. And so I feel this is my family. This is where I fit in. And I also really fascinated of Pankaj interpretation of the edtech policy in China that is publicized a lot recently. As people can see from my bio, I'm very, very heavy in education technology. And I actually operate on a global scale. My product is in more than 60 countries. But of course, I was born in China. I spent the first 17 years of my life in China. I operate 2 startups in China. So I know a lot about the kind of the back channel of all these the Chinese policies for education. In fact, I knew about this more than a year ago. So a little correction, not really correction, but perhaps the added perspective I'd like to build upon, in addition to what Pankaj mentioned, is that this is not Chinese government want to make education more affordable or cheaper. In fact, this is the Chinese overall policy to prevent a slow but certain death of education, or if you like, the involution of education. Because for too long, the education industry in China is all about helping the people who can afford to pay money to actually gain a fantastic exam result. And then a large proportion of them would end up working in a kind of like in a very, shall I say, productive job in Europe or United States. They're not producing the innovation and the kind of like the real social and economical capital for China. And so Chinese government has made this massive change, which takes a lot of courage because it's literally killing about 80% of the edtech investment ecosystem in order to promote the learning of real creativity and innovation and art. And of course, the other side is the result of the intensifying Cold War that U.S. has set upon China. And so therefore, Chinese government wants to get tighter control of education. So that actually is a real driver behind the recent changes. Now, fortunately, for too long, I have been personally an advocate of education for creativity, for happiness, and for skills. As you can see that my company, Mel Science, is all about inspire happiness and kind of a creativity and observation for children and parents to actually pay more attention to science. It's not about the exams, because most of the scientists behind Mel Science, we all used to be brilliant in academic in schools, but we're brilliant not because we have to pass the exam, because we just love science. I used to be the champion of Chinese biology Olympiad, right? And in fact, 4 of our 20 research scientists in Mel Science used to be gold medalists in International Chemistry and Physics Olympiad. You do not reach this level at your age group simply by trying to memorize things. We all have so much passion to learn science. And we felt that we want to create a company so that we can inject passion and the happiness of science learning to the society, to the global community. And then a part of the driver is actually very relevant to the subject of today's discussion. That is the age of technology. I mean, I'm talking about my son is 11 this year, so he actually graduated from his primary school during these 2 pandemic years in United Kingdom. So I'm really proud of him. I remember when I was 11, my most technical thing was actually writing diary and trying to listen, to try to actually play with cassette players, to listen to music. But my son, at the age of 11, what he does is that he does a lot of YouTube videos. He passionately creates YouTube videos of both funny natures or animation or science. And he will compose digital music into his YouTube channel as well. And so that shows the difference. My son keeps telling me, Daddy, I want to design a really interesting and a kind of fun video content to describe 6 different forms of energy. Heck, I used to be a brilliant student. Guys, I used to be like when I was in Beijing, I used to be a member of the top 5 school in Beijing. Can you imagine? Beijing, I was probably one of the best students in the top 5 school in Beijing. But my son is today, his level of creativity, innovation, and master of technology, for me, is just like super impressive. And he's not alone. A lot of his mates are doing even better. And not because I pressurize him to do so, because he's interested in doing so. So this shows a difference of 36 years. My son and I have a difference of 36 years. And if we go back to our grandfather, as we can remember, those days, perhaps people will spend 5 years to be in schools. And if you remember the kind of thickness of the biology or chemistry textbook compared with the thickness of today's biology and chemistry textbook, we are talking about during the last perhaps 70 years, and the human being have decided to spend 3 times as much time in schools as a standard for education. But we actually have to learn 300 times the kind of technology or science knowledge. And that difference is actually accelerating. So I agree entirely that education has to fundamentally change, because the old kind of like exam-based, kind of a certification-based system that is, as Pankaj rightly pointed out, born from the days of Industrial Revolution, just will not do, because we cannot put people, our future generations, in school for 50 years. We have to inspire children to master technology, to be in command of technology and knowledge, rather than memorize things. They need to understand the essence of things and to be able to work in teams. And that team, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't just mean other human being. It actually means artificial intelligence. Because today, anything we ask Google, we can get an answer. What next? You then need to take action on it. You need to have a purpose. You need to find a problem. And these kind of skills are what we loosely term a soft skill, but I think it's a lot more complicated than that. You need to design, you need to educate the children to develop a sense of purpose, to be able to define the problem, define the kind of like the boundary of the problem, and to work the solution to be able to resolve it. And if he can do that, he will be in command of artificial intelligence. He would be in partner with other great human beings or great minds. He will have happiness, he will have productivity, he will not lose job. Otherwise, if you stuck yourself to be a taxi driver, a financial analyst, a accountant, a lawyer, your job might disappear tomorrow. So I think, yes, I agree, education has to change. And a lot of countries, a lot of outstanding individuals are doing precisely that. Such as Rob Hoban of Netherlands. He invented a school called Agora School. Agora School is a school with no syllabus, no exam, no classrooms. Yeah, 12 to 18 years old children would discuss their goals with their mentor, set a goal, and go ahead to do all the research and complete the goal. It's very similar to what we do now as an entrepreneur. And I am a serial entrepreneur. I know exactly how it works. And I felt this kind of education will have mileage, will deliver value, will deliver love and passion, and it will deliver outstanding future leaders. That's what we need to do. So that is my little contribution on this lovely Sunday to this room and to this subject. Let me hand over the mic back to our brilliant moderator. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Guy. I think you've touched upon from an education point of view and how does that impact workforce in a very brilliant way. Pankaj, we'll come back to you on sharing your thoughts on that. But Arvind and Nisha have been waiting patiently, so we'll just pick on them and then we'll come back to you. Arvind, thanks for joining us on the stage. I don't know if you have any perspectives to share or ask questions or with any of the speakers on the stage.
Hey, thanks, Anis, and thanks, Pankaj. This has been a really awesome room with a lot of insights. So I did have a couple of questions. So let me start with the first one, right? So speaking of some of the path-breaking things China has been doing, another one I'm sure many of us would have read this recent past 2 days or something, the Chinese cyberspace watchdog, right? They publish certain draft regulations for how algorithms, recommendation algorithms, etc., should be thought about going forward, right? So far, it was almost like the Wild West, but some of the interesting things supposedly mentioned in this published list of regulations include that every person, as an example, should be allowed the option to consume an unpersonalized feed if that is their choice, or they should be told which are the reasons why a particular recommendation was made to them, and so on and so forth. So a lot of interesting aspects discussed there, a lot of discussions that it can spark off. So basically, already this and other such measures are perhaps moving lot of the thought. And let me pick just AI as a example for a technology, right? So now lot more people are required to think of AI from the ethical standpoint, from the policy standpoint. Maybe it is far more important now to be able to come up with business models that leverage AI well, as opposed to, let's say, coming up with just the new best AI model, right? So AI as such has an outlet for artists. If you take GANs, and it's early days now, but still, over time, even artists can interface with AI, and it becomes maybe a form of expression for them. Law, philosophy, all of these slightly tangential seeming areas are now going to be more and more connected with AI, and going forward, these could become more important, as opposed to previously. If we think of AI, it's mostly probably linked to statisticians, mathematicians, researchers, computer scientists, physics grads, and so on, right? So this kind of evolution is probably parallel to how technologies evolve in general. They start out in a particular manner, and over time they become embedded enough that every such slightly tangential seeming area gets linked to AI, right? So, would love to hear the thoughts, Pankaj, you have, and even other folks on the forum, that how do you see, as an example, AI as a technology evolving? How, do you see other such I don't know how to put it, domains or whatever, like policy, AI policy, or philosophy in AI, or business models related to AI? How do you see those things becoming far more important compared to just the algos that are still most important as of date?
Thanks, Arvind. Really, really great question. But before I go to that, I have to thank Anis for bringing Kai into the discussion and educating me on some of the aspects. So thank you, Kai, very much. I really appreciated your perspective and learned something new. So thanks for that. Going on to some of the thoughts that come to mind, Arvind, based on the question that you raised, I tend to sort of go back to the basics. In my view, the way I look at it is I kind of look at this BCAD of our world. The BC was the more deterministic, predictable, waterfallian world, and today now we have this whole growth mindset oriented, agile, ever evolving world which keeps reinventing itself all the time. So if I were to look at those two scenarios, I think the policies and processes that were made in the past, they sort of generally had a view of what the contours of the playground were. We used to have 5-year plans. I think today you can't have a 5-year plan because no one has any clue, or you can't have a 5-year strategy because no one knows where it's going to be headed. In fact, that's probably the wrong question to ask, right? So in my opinion, I think the way we need to write policies or procedures or ethics and all of those has to also undergo a change. And my personal guess is that we will not be able to imagine every future possibility, and I suspect we might continue to remain a bit of reactionary in that sense, to say, hey, we didn't even know this could happen, and now let's try and immediately sort of find a way to remedy it or put rules in place which can do that. So I think the only one big thought in my mind, Arvind, is that policy making regulation in the past was slightly easier because the exceptions arose few and far in between over a period of time. I think the way, if we want all these inventions and innovations to happen all the time at rapid scale, I think that people will not be able to predict all the loopholes that might exist in the current thinking on the way the policies and regulations are, and therefore those regulators and policy makers have to be far more adept at continuously, I would say, use the same AI to get some signals from the market and try to correct those things which may be loopholes which are there, because people will continue to find loopholes and try to do those things. So that's the only one big thought in my mind, that the policy makers and the rule makers have to be more proactive, more agile, and keep looking at what they have done, and is it serving the purpose, or that service that purpose needs to be redrafted, so to say. But happy to hear other perspectives. I'm sure in this room there are several people who probably might have other ideas which I think everyone can benefit from. So Anis, over back to you.
Yeah, so yes, Anis, thank you so much. You know, good evening to the moderators if they are in India or whichever part of India, and greetings to all the listeners and speakers here. So just adding to what Aravind said just now. I've got two kids. My daughter is 21 years old, and she studies in US. She's doing a dual major in CSDA. They call it in NYU. It's called Computer Science and Data Analytics. And I have a 13-year-old son who is very, very interested in mathematics, technology, and physics, but none of the other subjects. So it's a very so yes, the technology is a very big part of it, and I'll start with recounting two incidences that happened very recently. So my daughter has got a internship in Merrill Lynch in NYU, which she doesn't want to take because it's in finance and investment banking. And her dad, who is a technocrat himself, they had a very interesting conversation, and he wanted her to do this. He wants her to do this, and she is very clear that she really doesn't want to do it. And she said that, dad, in financial is done now, we will be moving to bitcoins and blockchain. What are you talking about? And so so of course we didn't have an answer to that, and honestly that actually made me, and then she's, the discussion went down south and too much of drama, and then she started crying and she said, mom, you have to tell dad to leave me alone, and I know what I'm doing in life. I said, well, when I was your age I had no idea what I was doing in life, but if you say so. So that was one conversation we had, and the second conversation I had with my son, who has built his entire community on Discord, and some problem happened, and he was just explaining how he's going to solve it. And he said to me that, you know what, mom, I have tapped into the collective consciousness of the community, internet community, and you know what? It is even better than quantum physics. There are too many words, too many wordy words. And I said, how did you do that? I said, yeah, we figured out the solution. We solved something. And I said, okay. And both these conversations went off, zoom past my head. I will not pretend to be knower of anything, but I know one thing for sure is that we have no clue where AI and technology is going. We actually do not have that clue. We are trying to find the answers with the limitation of our own experiences, which was a residual of the industrial age, which was our parents' age, into the IT age, which we lived through. But we are currently living in digital transformation or the digital age. But by the time these kids actually come to the workforce, the world will have changed beyond our recognition. And as Pankaj rightly said, that we're trying to find, we are reacting to it, but we are not the co-creators of the tomorrow's world. We are not, and we will not ever be, because the way the world is changing, the way technology has altered the entire landscape, be it culture, be it economic, be it financial. Internet has become the biggest democracy right now, even though we are defined by the nations or so-called national borders. But none of this is going to hold true in 20 years from now. I have every reason to believe that the way the kids are going to work, my 13-year is going to work. Honestly, I cannot even imagine his office. It could be, a beach in Bali, or it could be much high tech, Apple office kind of a place. I really don't know, or even in this outer space as well. I have no idea. But so what we are discussing right now is very limited with our own experiences and perceptions. We have done our bit, I guess. And that is why I worry when people who are making policies are so old and so jaded that they cannot even envisage the world the way the world is changing. They don't have the grip on it. They cannot even imagine it. And that actually brings me to the wise Umar Khayyam, who said that our children live in the future where we cannot even go, not even in our dreams. So we can only talk of what is happening right now, possibly 2 years, possibly at most next 5 years. But anything over and beyond that, honestly, I don't think we can do that. But one thing is for sure, that whatever is going to happen, our kids are going to be very well equipped for it because they are the ones who are going to be co-creating this. So I'm Nisha and I'm complete.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Anish. And I'll make this point and leave also, but this is a fascinating discussion. I'm so glad that I just walked into the room. Thank you very much. So, Nisha, I'll just add to your point. 3 years ago, my younger son, who was like 9 years old, and we were walking on the streets of London one day, and I just asked him, what do you want to be when you we're listening to some music, and I was trying to expose to him to Beatles and all the kind of music of our times. And I just said, what do you want to be in life when you grow up? And he's good at the piano also. So he says that, Dad, I want to make I want to make human beings an empowered species. So, and I would like kind of like just took a step back. What did you mean by that? Empowered species. So he says, can you illustrate? So he says, look, uh, and that time we had no COVID and all. So he says that, look, I find that most of the time we are treating ailments by using chemistry. We should be treating ailments using biology. So and then like and he's very fascinated both in astrophysics, and he likes to watch the suns and the stars, and he knows a lot about it. And also at the molecular level, he's very interested in human cells. How do cells, and he reads more than he should be reading about it. So very fascinating, and I completely agree with your point. It's very hard to imagine how our kids will be, and what the work environment will be 20 years down the line. But as responsible parents, and as a part of responsible parenting package, I think we should constantly instill in them the very important role of purpose, which the thing which Pankaj mentioned about purpose, product, and process. So, so long we give them the right pivots, and we give them the right mechanism to think about the purpose of their life, which could change over years, and could be, you could have a purpose for 5 years, and also tell them that life is a journey. Therefore, the purpose could change and should change. So I think we need not be too much worried about it. So I think things will be all fine, and it will be a happy world. So thanks a lot. With that,
Yes, Prakash, I
I would like to take
cannot
a
agree
leave.
more.
And that day, and that day, I felt almost reassured. Um, After that, I've never really bothered about what the future, the career of my kids is going to be. So perhaps I will never end up having an argument with my son as to which organization he will join, because I got really reassured that evening that probably my son will be his own best guide to choose the career that he needs to opt for and steer his way through. All I need to do is to kind of give him the right frameworks, the right pivots, and to probably enable in a limited way his journey through those pivots and frameworks. Fantastic.
I, I couldn't agree more with you, Prakash. And this is exactly what I always tell my husband that, just let them be, because we are very limited with our own experiences. And, in the Maslow's theory of hierarchy, they're almost at the, self-actualization stage. That's what they talk about. Whereas we were, our parents were on level 1 and 2, perhaps we were at level 3 and 4, and they are already at 4 or 5. They were born at a level where, a lot of things were already done for them. So that is why they can tap into their, the higher
Right.
consciousness, or yes, absolutely. And they are thinking, the conversation, I was like, but I was just zapped when my son said, "Oh, I tapped into the collective consciousness of the community, and you know what, mom? We find a solution, and it's like it's better than quantum physics." And this is exactly what he said, and my head is reeling at that point of time. Well, when 13, I had no idea. I was only busy liking Amir Khan, for that matter, and here he is talking about quantum consciousness. So I think these kids are really evolved. They are brilliant. Their neurons are connected in a way that we cannot even fathom, and they are in a good place. And the framework, the fact that you talk about providing the right framework, I think that's the best we can do as parents. And I think once if we are able to do that, then our job is done. So yes,
Correct.
Prakash, thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you, Nisha. Lovely to meet everybody. Thanks, and bye for now. Enjoy your weekend, rest of your weekend. See you around. Bye bye.
Thanks, Prakash. And thanks, Nisha, for doing that. I would say use the Hindi word jugalbandi between the two. So I'll just quickly reset the room and I'll get Nazila. Thanks for being patient. So hello, everyone. This is Asian Digital Supermovers Club, where we get different experts and OGs from different walks of life. Today, we are joined by Pankaj Rai, who's the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Aditya Birla Group. So we are talking about the future of workforce in AI and tech, in the age of AI and tech. And we've had some amazing and fascinating conversation going on for the last 1 hour. And we'll continue the conversation for 30 more minutes and then we'll end the room. But before we do that, Nazila, thank you for being patient and being on the stage and participating. Do you have any thoughts or perspectives or questions for people on the stage?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks to Monica for inviting me. This is such a really good discussion. I've always thought about the educational system itself and its need to be more agile. I can sort of speak from the US perspective because I know we sort of touched upon, India and China. And I know coming from a mostly US educational system, I definitely didn't feel like I learned how to learn. There was like really no problem solving or financial literacy or much soft skills or creativity that's taught in most American schools. And unfortunately, they also sort of teach people how to take tests and get into college or just become workers and not innovators. And I think this is sort of perhaps a global problem with educational systems, and they are definitely not equipped, to sort of train people, because we don't have, like Pankaj and Nisha and everybody said, we don't have 5-year plans anymore because everything changes so constantly. So that creativity and that need to be innovative is something that, unfortunately, I think parents themselves have to teach them. And I think everybody in the stage is, you're in a fortunate position to kind of equip your children with that. But I don't know if all families have that, system in place themselves. Thank you.
Now, you brought out a very interesting point, Nazila, which is the concept of how to learn and how to teach yourself. And that's going to determine success for many of us. It's not just the people who are, or kids or children who are in the education system right now, but for many of us who still have few years or decades to still continue to work. And I would love to bring Pankaj because I know he's connected, engaged with a lot of institutions and corporate bodies. And so, Pankaj, what's your thought on the entire concept of the skill of learning and how to learn on your own?
Thanks, Anis, and fascinating discussion between Prabhakar and Nisha and now Nazila. So I do want to make a couple of other points which just struck my mind listening to this discussion. So I think the one thing that I want to say is I think the whole the career, our company, our job. In my mind, all of this is a expression of human imagination. Maybe using big words, but that's what I really think. That what's all of this? This is end of the day. Someone wanted to do something, and this is an expression. Now, I think in the past, our tools and techniques to give expression to our imagination were limited. And now suddenly they have just, become unlimited, and not just AI. There were so many other technologies. So I think the point that I'm making is that a lot of people think about careers and some of these things in a very limited fashion. Because the tools and technique that were available in the past were very few, and we did not allow our imagination to run wild. Because you could imagine anything, but you could not express it because the tools are not available. And now I think our children have inherited a world, like Nisha said, who just inherited a world of abundance. We are all, born in the world of scarcity, where things, the whole mental model, and every question that we ask for a very, question of the scarcity mindset. And I'm in this world of abundance. I think they are willing to give expression to every imagination they have, and they can actually do it. So I think in my mind, the whole problem today is that we are asking the wrong question. Those questions were relevant in the scarcity era. I think those questions are not relevant. And if someone asks them, we should say change the question because your perspective is probably warped. It's old fashioned, and that world does not exist anymore. We have come to a new world where different questions need to be asked. So I think if you were to think about all these tools, techniques, AIs, jobs, all of those as an opportunity for you to express yourself, I think the world will be so different. I think we should be seeking out new problems because those are the expressions of our imagination, and we'll be solving them using these tools. So I think when people talk about, I have an AI first company, I have an AI first strategy, I say, you know what? I think you should have a purpose first strategy, and AI happens to be the newest technology on the block, which allows you to do that. Maybe tomorrow there's something else. So I want to sort of, turn this question in a different way to say, end of the day, human beings are creative. They want creative expression of all their imagination. We are being allowed to do many more things than we could do before. Can we just remember to be that? And all of these other things are a means to an end. I think that line of thinking would, promote far more positive way of looking at it, because today a lot of people are just scared. I think the whole scare is worrying me, because I would rather feel that if you were, thinking about technology is possible, I would feel that people should be far more, growth oriented, thinking about the positives versus getting worried. Unfortunately, because I think we are asking the questions of the scarcity era, is creating that worry. I think we have to just change the conversation, Anis.
Great, Pankaj. Thanks. I think that questioning itself is a big point today in this day and age. There was a question which Arvind had, second one, and Pankaj probably, we get to Rajiv. I'll probably ask because, you've joined as a chief data and analytics officer. While we talk about the current workforce, which is probably there, and we talk about the future workforce, but people who are going to determine the future and somewhat responsible for the future of workforce is also the CXO communities. Now, and the word I will use, Nisha, like the people who are in the policymakers, like she used the word old, or their thinking is outdated. How do you see the people sitting on the top? What is that X needs to change? Like, when we talk about CXOs, what are those new and evolving roles which people need to think about bringing in and start creating change in the entire ecosystem?
Yeah, Pankaj, I love the way you framed your, when the last bit of conversation, and you're so spot on when you say that, uh, you know, reword the question, ask another question, and also finding a purpose. And Anis, the answer lies in these two statements. So it's people like Pankaj or people like you and people like me, even though we cannot see the future, but because where we are and the way we are thinking or articulating what we have to say, um, I think we can only facilitate and enable that, and the next generation will take over it. So we just need to make those stepping stones when we are actively thinking in those lines. And I love the way Pankaj has put everything in perspective, and because he's leading such a huge company, and so many people like he's leading such big teams. So possibly that is the way to look forward. What we can do at best right now with all the information that is available to us and everything which is happening around us is look at like reframe the question statement once again, and actually find the purpose. Everything has to have a meaning or a purpose, and this, if we are actively inculcating into our lives, and or even in our policies, why is this policy coming for, and why should we do what we have to do, say for example, okay, internet has become a democracy, but then what are the effects that are going to happen, and what are the structure or framework we can put in place, so that if A happens, what do we do, or B happens, what do we do? So a lot of futuristic thinking discourses, and philosophical, so I think this whole thing will come to a full circle, where we will also have to tap into the ancient wisdom of the ancient philosophies, and how did they find their solutions, because those stories also have the key to what is happening in the world. I truly believe that the time and civilizations are cyclical and not linear, and there are a lot many answers hidden in the ancient wisdom. So possibly we will need to turn back and look into what kind of statements are hidden in there. They were also very advanced, and they were technologically advanced, and they had far, if you read those stories, and if you for a second imagine that those stories were true. So the kind of technological advancement they have had, we are only scratching the surface as far as it's concerned. So coming back to ethics, coming back to the structures of society, now these are the important questions, the social contracts. These are the important questions that need to be answered. And all the best we can do is again ask the right questions, A, and B, look into the philosophical aspect of life, finding our purpose, the meaning, the ethical structures, the new social contracts to address new way of thinking, new way of living. So I think these are the things that we should really be looking into and discoursing and having a conversation about. That's how I see the world. That's how I envision the world, and I'm very hopeful that civilization will only progress further. So I'm Nisha and I'm complete, Anis.
Thanks, Nisha. Pankaj, you have anything to add to this?
No, Anis, I think this is very well said by Nisha. Nothing more to add. Thanks.
Okay, great. Rajiv, you've been patiently waiting on the stage to share your perspectives. Thank you. Over to you. If you have any questions, thoughts, happy
Thank
to
you so
bring
much,
them on.
Anish. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks, Nisha. Thanks, Arvind. And thanks to all the listeners. I hope I'm audible. If not, please let me know. Okay, thank you so much.
You're perfect.
So, okay, this is the question I keep wondering about and thinking about. I've been in the corporate industry for 17, 18 years now. I have worked in the domain of procurement, sourcing, primarily contract management, wherein we have dealt with high value B2B contracts for various products and services and categories. So I have seen this requirement and the industry changing a lot. Previously, the kind of skill set I used to possess would help me land into a job, and now it's not the case anymore. I keep evolving and I keep learning new things myself along with the requirements. So I'll keep it short and I'll just go back and ask few questions before I even try to answer this. That what the future of workforce looks like. I would ask, whose future are we talking about here, first of all? And what workforce are we talking about here? For example, as we say, there are parallel universe. Here on this planet itself, on Earth itself, I see a lot of civilizations, a lot of different ways of living in different countries and different levels of Maslow's hierarchy. We talked about the people or the kids who are going to be, different professionals from the topmost level, like Nisha just mentioned, those who are already at level 1. So they will obviously observe this world in a different way. But I think that we are still having a lot of population who are stuck in, maybe level 3, 4, 5. I don't have the number yet, so I cannot comment on that. So whose future are we talking about here? So for them, a lot of things will change. For those who are at a lower level of Maslow's hierarchy, a lot of things will change as well. And like Nisha said, and I completely agree with that, we cannot even imagine. For example, one fine day, few weeks ago, I was wondering where is this, technology thing going? A lot of new technology coming up every day. And I thought that maybe tomorrow there might be opportunities for spaceship fitment trainers. Who knows? There may be interplanetary travels, as a few elites have already started doing, like we heard. I don't have the detail, but who knows? Tomorrow there might be opportunities into a spaceship or planet fitment or training industry. That will be a whole new industry altogether. So we have no clue. We have no idea. Now, where does the requirement come from? Let us look at that. The industry that requires people or skills, people equipped with skill sets, those come from people who are leading those organizations, people like Pankaj and other people as well. I am in the mid-senior level of management, so I am not the one who is making decisions, so I can't comment on that. So they have a vision. They have a vision to take that organization somewhere, someplace. Because of that, they open few roles which require a certain skill set. So if you really want to know what can be the future of workforce, you can actually look at all open, job descriptions or indents, and one can do a research, and one can easily understand what kind of requirement is coming up. And this can be for a short span of time. It will not be something that the leader might be thinking maybe in the next few years or so, because depending upon availability of the skill set, also depending upon the availability of the human resource, those goals might change tomorrow. Let us say, a few moments ago Pankaj was saying that he is trying to get people who have long term vision, those who are not looking for low hanging fruits and just equip themselves for a short span of time and just earn few quick bucks, and then not look at the larger picture. So we are finding it hard to find such talent, those who have business acumen plus technical expertise. It's not easy. You gain business acumen with a long experience, but what if you don't have the technical skill set? You will have to depend on someone else. So it will be a combination that you will require in the long run to sustain. That 4 to 40, we already discussed, those time are gone. So every new day you have to evolve, you have to keep evolving. And for same reason, I have recently enrolled myself into one of the courses for data science from IIT Madras. They started last year, and I saw it really competitive and good for me to help me, get into this industry so that I understand. I don't intend to get into a complete job role into that, but having worked in the industry for so long, I feel that if my data is being evaluated by someone else, I might get a biased result, because I know what kind of data I have and how it can be evaluated and how it can be done. So if I have both the levels of expertise, business acumen plus technical, then nothing better than that. There can be a lot of things that we can put it to use, and therefore we can gain ample advantage for that. So yeah, I'll keep it short, and that's all from me. Thank you so much. I'm glad I could hear Pankaj today.
Anis, can I go? Thank you, Rajiv. Thanks for triggering some additional thoughts. And I'll just share. And I like to share thoughts based on some examples. So one of the example was someone asked me that what would my career path be? And, I said, I always say that sometimes is that even the right question? But I know the spirit of that question that, can I have a long and fulfilling job where I continue to be relevant and all of that? So I said, okay, I can tell you a 3 or 4 paths which many people before you have come, but frankly, do you really want a path given to you and choose from that? Because if you look around yourself, companies are talking about mass personalization. No one actually wants the same product. Everyone wants a very personalized product, including medicine. So my point to him was that I can give you a few paths and ideas on what those paths are, but frankly, I would be so much more happier if you created your own path based on your own passion, based on your own purpose and stuff like that. So I think that's where I'm headed with this whole career conversation, also saying what would a career be. And I think in people's mind there are a few paths, and companies actually have created those career ladders to say you will be this designation or that designation, or this role or that role with this JD. In my mind, some of those are actually constraining, and sometimes people who have grown up using some of those paths are probably asking the wrong question or having the wrong notion of what a path looks like, because in my mind that whole path is at one level a random walk, at another level it's a very fluid thing. Like I said, the only thing to me which is constant is that there is a purpose that I'm going after, and if you want to call me X or Y or Z during that path, that's fine. I don't care so much. And getting so stuck to that path and that industry connotation, to me, I think it doesn't sound right in the world that we are inheriting. So I think that whole career path and the whole future workforce, to me, has to be rethought about in terms of even the question that people are asking. Back to you, Anis.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. No comment from me, Anis.
Now, Rajiv, you had a very interesting perspective where you mentioned which workforce we are talking about. Somebody may say I'm a selfish person, but I'm also thinking about my own career. I'm still not done. I still have a few decades to go from a working perspective. So, even I'm thinking about what's the future of my work. And I'm sure, all of us are, like you are, like you've enrolled for a particular program. So, there is a inherent personal interest when I talk about this topic is about what do I need to do to evolve and adapt to the ever-changing world, because
Yeah, you just give me. You just if you could give me
Sure.
10 seconds, I could say where. Yeah, this thought actually originated from one of the talks I was hearing to, which was dedicated to some country from Africa. They were talking about new technology and all those things, and somebody rightly quoted there's a great made a great comment there, that what is the use of technology when we are struggling with hunger and all those basic needs and basic things and problems like that. I don't need to explain on that. So I really keep thinking that, see, world is different from every one of us. The way we see world is not the same for my son, like Nisha said. Nisha's daughter has a completely different perspective altogether to something that her father is advising her to do. Same is the case with me. I'm a father of two kids, so it's very hard for me to kind of convince them. The lens that I used to use for my own career to design that, and that is no more useful, and it's changing every day. So yeah, that's all, Anish. Thanks.
No, Rajiv, you're bang on. We'll have one last question because we are on top of our 90 minutes. Pankaj has been gracious enough to spend his Sunday evening with us. So, Harshit, thank you for joining us on the stage. Would you like to go and probably share your thoughts?
Hey, hi Anish, hi Rajiv, hi Nisha, hi Arvind, hi Pankaj. So nice topic for a conversation. And first, what I'm curious about is that how much long term are we really discussing the uh, future of workforce? Like 10 years or 20 years or 50 years?
Let's say 5 years for now, for the sake of discussion, Harshit.
Yeah. I was listening to both Rajiv and Pankaj talk, and obviously because you are most probably older than me, and I think I relate to some part of it. And again, it's very complicated, very fuzzy topic to discuss because it's very polarizing. Because say when Naval Ravikant says that farming will get automated, and you take that insight and move to a remote village in Uttar Pradesh in India, right? And you talk to this farmer and you say that, you know what, one day this entire thing is going to be automated. There will be going to be machines which will going to do farming, and you will have time and probably a better life. So I don't know. I have been conflicted. I have been conflicted on this topic a lot, and but I generally believe that we are moving in the right direction because I see the videos that Boston Dynamics puts out on the YouTube, and it reminds me of the moment in history, say 50 years back, when IBM made this big, huge 5 feet or 6 feet hard disk, and it was big. It was big like a 500-liter tank, not the fighting tank, but the water tank, and it had 5 MB of storage storage. And right now, when I'm speaking in this room, when I'm talking on Clubhouse on this topic, I'm holding a handheld device that has 256 gigs of storage in my hand and 8 gigs of computational power. So when I read history and when I see that what has happened in the last 50 years, I'm very young. I'm not very old. I'm 26 years of age. I remember the time growing up, and my first mobile phone was a Nokia 3300, which was a black and white phone. And that time, Nokia used to be the most popular player. And within 14, 15 years, we have come to a point where basically we have Apple iPhone with LiDAR, with better cameras, with more capable augmented reality. So I generally believe in what Naval says, and that is that we are not moving towards less jobs. There is going to be more jobs, And it's already happening because as an engineer, I've been working remotely for the last, I guess, 2 years. And if you're really sitting and observing, then you'll get those insights because things are changing. I have nephews, I have young niece who are 10 to 12 years old, and they are learning online. They are learning on Microsoft Teams. They are learning to code on YouTube. And you have to understand, everyone wants to learn from the best. They do not want to go to this local institution where where so I guess the future of workforce is remote, more flexible, and something which Naval says that the atomization of factories. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Arshit. And you're bang on what you just said. But candidly, as Nisha and all of us have said, the future is still a little unclear for many of us. While we can all guess and we can create those pathways for either our nephews or our own children. And on that thought, it's been
Anis,
yeah,
Anis, this is Pankaj.
yes.
I can't let the session close without the 5C framework.
Please. And I wanted to actually come on that, and because you've known for those 5 C's frameworks, which I'm sure.
No, so I think for the benefit of others, and Anis knows that this is a question that my daughter had asked on what should I study, and I came up with the 5C framework. There's a longer discussion. There's a derivation of that framework. So I said, while there's a framework because I'm a management guy, but there's also a derivation because I'm an engineer. It isn't a 4P framework which doesn't have a derivation. So anyway, in short, I'll just give the answer on what that framework in my mind is, and I think it's not just relevant for my daughter, but for me and pretty much everyone else. But everyone is free to derive their own framework. I think the 5 C's really represent. The first one is curiosity. That I ought to be curious. Looking around what's happening. That curiosity with a view to the next C, which is compassion, and absorb and appreciate what the world needs around us. The third one is conviction. So that curiosity and compassion should lead to some conviction in my heart on where is it that I can play? What should I do based on what I see around me? That should lead to the fourth C, which is my creativity on solving that problem or attacking that problem in a creative way. And communication is really talking about it or launching that product in the market. And based on the customer feedback, should fuel my curiosity back again. So in my mind, this 5 C's virtuous cycle of curiosity giving light to compassion, to my conviction, creativity, and communication is the way I see the circle of life, circle of living. And I think that's the way I look at it. To me, within that, what that purpose ought to be, or what that job ought to be, or what that career ought to be, whether it is AI driven or not AI driven, seem to be subservient under this framework. But like I said, that's a longer separate discussion. But I did want to leave this thought in this room.
Oh, that's wonderful. Pankaj, what was the last C?
Communication, really. So because when you communicate to your customers or you launch that product, then it further sort of brings your curiosity back, because they may sometimes reject it. So then you want to be curious, what happened, what would I do? And then that whole cycle repeats itself.
So, Pankaj, would you mind if I attribute this and I write an article around it and publish it on LinkedIn?
You can certainly do that. I mean, I'm like an open source guy. In fact, this article has been published in a Wiley book and some other publications. I've spoken about it in other talks. So I have to say that some people will say that they have heard it before. But frankly, if you have a different audience than mine, I'm sure I would love to have all these ideas be open source, because that's how I think world should be.
No. I truly believe in attributing. I mean, so I've heard it from you, so I'm going to attribute it to you. So,
okay. Sure.
Co-creation, Pankaj.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Pankaj, I know your time is valuable, but Anisha, if you could allow me, I have one thought that I keep pondering over, if I could. I mean, is that okay?
Sure,
Anish?
Pankaj. Let's keep it to short so that
Yeah. It will be just a yes or a no kind of a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I know. I won't waste his time unnecessarily. Okay. And to everyone here, see, we talk about need. We always talk about product market fitment and all those things. I also feel that, okay, if there is a need, you must build something, you must solve the problem and all those things, problem definition and trying to solve that. But how I am seeing it in recent past, like I would talk about only 2 to 3 decades maximum since the time I have become conscious of life and have started understanding it. I think that awareness or knowledge about anything or any solution is what actually creates the need. If you don't know about something, you would not obviously feel the need for that. So if I can take an example, crypto can be the best example. Do I need a crypto to operate in this world? Am I not eligible right now to buy anything using, the current currency? I am very much capable of doing that. Okay, crypto can add few things. So technology can be an enabler in many ways. But it's not that we can't live without those technologies. But I also feel that consumerism is being driven by large corporates or maybe big business houses to the level that actually the consumers do not really feel the need to use them, and sometimes it feels like it is being pushed, and because of that there is a demand that is being created. So I feel that because supply is there, demand is being created. Previously it was like if there is a demand, then there will be a supply. What are your thoughts, Pankaj, on this, please?
I think in the interest of time, I've shared my number with you. Maybe I can have a bilateral chat with you, because I think we've run out of time. Love to sort of engage with anyone else. I love chatting with people one on one. But in the interest of time, I would rather have it offline. And these are very interesting nuanced discussion which can which can go on, and I learn a lot. So I would rather do that separately.
No, thanks a lot, Pankaj. This has been an amazing conversation, some very interesting thoughts. Personally, I've learned a lot on this, and I'm sure the audience who were there. And thanks to Nisha, Rajiv, Arvind, and everybody else, Prakash, Cal, Monica, whoever joined on the stage has been profound in terms of adding to this conversation. It's been one of the well Sundays spent for me personally. So thank you, Pankaj, and thank you, everyone, and for joining us today. Again, as a reminder, we are a Nation Digital Supermovers Club, where we host different OGs and thought leaders and bring different perspectives specific to tech, product management, fintech, and many more other topics.
Thank you, Anis. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone, for being here, and it was really engaging.
Great. We'll be shutting down the room in the next 30 seconds. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night. If you are in India, or if anyone else, have a good day. And probably
Thanks.
catch up
Bye.
soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.